She rode her bike every afternoon. Same path, same smile, purple helmet always slightly crooked. 12-year-old Brielle Carson was the heart of the neighborhood. Then one evening, she didn't come home. Her bike was found on the sidewalk, tires still spinning. For nearly 22 years, her family lived without answers. Until a renovation crew tearing up an old basement in another town found a rusted trunk, sealed shut with 3 locks. And what was inside would bring a community to its knees. It was a warm Thursday afternoon. The kind where kids still played outside, dogs barked from porches, and moms called their children in at dusk. Brielle Carson, age 12, was last seen at 6:38 p.m., riding her pink and white bike up Orchard Lane wearing a purple helmet, denim overalls, and her favorite glitter sneakers. She waved to her neighbor, Mrs. Donnelly, as she passed the mailbox. That wave was the last anyone ever saw of her. By 8:15 p.m., panic had settled in. Her mom, Renee Carson, called the police. Officers responded immediately. Brielle was a good kid, honor roll, polite, never missed curfew. They found her bike 2 blocks away, laid carefully on the sidewalk near an empty lot. No sign of struggle. No blood. No evidence she ran away. Just a gone. The town of Willow Glen mobilized. Flyers went up. Search parties formed. Helicopters, K-9 units, and hundreds of volunteers scoured every inch of the surrounding woods and back roads. But no leads came. Tips dried up. And after 6 months, Brielle's name faded from the headlines. Her parents divorced the next year. Her room remained untouched, frozen in time. A dollhouse still halfway open. A library book never returned. A calendar with the date she disappeared still circled in red. Over the next 2 decades, the Carsons moved out of the neighborhood. The house where Brielle had lived was sold, remodeled, then sold again. New families moved in, unaware of the history beneath their feet. Until 2023, when a young couple, Tom and Miranda Wexler, bought the now aging home with plans to renovate it into an Airbnb. Contractors started work on the basement first. It had a low ceiling, exposed pipes, and a dirt floor partially covered with aging concrete. On the 3rd day of demolition, a worker jackhammering near the rear wall struck something hollow. Metal. The team paused and dug around it, clearing dirt and cracked tiles. Soon, the full shape emerged. A metal trunk, roughly 4 feet long, 3 feet wide, covered in rust, bound with 3 padlocks. No markings. Tom called Miranda down. Did the inspector say anything about storage in the foundation? No. Why would something be buried under a concrete slab? The Wexlers made the right call. They contacted local authorities instead of opening the trunk themselves. Police arrived the next morning with forensics. The trunk was carefully lifted and brought to a secure location. A locksmith was brought in. The first lock came off easily. The second took longer. The third had to be sawed off. Then, silence. A detective slowly lifted the lid. And inside, everyone gasped. First, the smell. Stale, earthy, old. Next, clothing. Children's clothing. A denim overall set. A purple bike helmet with 1 cracked strap. A glitter sneaker. And beneath it, wrapped in a mold-stained blanket, human remains. Small. Fragile. Wrapped tightly, with care. The forensics team was silent. Reverent. They knew what they'd found. DNA tests were expedited. Within a week, the results confirmed what investigators already suspected. The remains belonged to Brielle Carson. She had been under the basement floor the entire time, just 40 feet from where her parents had stood crying for her return. Not taken across state lines. Not trafficked. Just buried in the very home that once held her laughter. The news shattered Willow Glen. Former neighbors wept openly on local television. Mrs. Donnelly, now 89, broke down in front of the same mailbox Brielle had waved from. She was right here. All this time. God forgive us. Renee Carson, now living in Michigan, released a statement through her lawyer. I can finally bring my daughter home. But I want to know who placed her there. Who stole her light from this world. Investigators obtained original blueprints of the house. And they found something odd. In 2001, shortly before Brielle vanished, the basement had been expanded. A small, undocumented addition that allowed access behind the original wall. City records showed the work was done without a permit. By a private contractor named Mark Ellison. A local handyman. No criminal record. No complaints. Known for working in cash-only side jobs. He'd also been seen in the neighborhood multiple times in the weeks leading up to Brielle's disappearance. As part of a second inspection of the basement, a detective noticed markings on a beam near the removed slab. At first, it looked like random scratches. But under blacklight, a faint engraving became visible. 4 letters. ME01. Mark Ellison. The year Brielle vanished. Police pulled Mark Ellison's address from old records. But when they arrived at his listed residence, they found the house empty, abandoned just 2 weeks earlier. Neighbors said he moved in a hurry. Gave no forwarding address. But one neighbor handed them something she found blowing across her yard the day after he left. A yellowed Polaroid photo of a young girl on a pink and white bike. In the background, a shadowed figure. Watching. Back then, Mark Ellison was just the guy next door. Literally. He lived one house down from the Carsons. Single, quiet, mid-40s. People said he was handy. Always working on projects. Always willing to help. But he never talked much. Didn't attend block parties. Didn't wave at kids. And no one could remember him smiling. Born in 1956 in West Virginia, Mark Ellison moved to Missouri in the late 80s. No criminal record. No social media. No spouse. No children. He worked odd jobs, fencing, drywall, basement remodeling, mostly under the table. His file was thin. Too thin. Detective Jada Renner, leading the reopened case, made a statement. People like Mark Ellison live between the lines. They don't leave much behind. That's how they disappear before anyone realizes they're gone. The photo found blowing across a neighbor's yard days after Ellison vanished became the next critical lead. Brielle, smiling on her bike, purple helmet on, hair in pigtails. But zoomed in the top right corner, was a silhouetted figure in a flannel shirt. Investigators enhanced the image. The outline was unmistakable, a man standing near the tree line. Same yard Ellison had once owned. Same shirt he was seen wearing in an old DMV photo from 2000. He had been watching her. Detectives returned to Willow Glen to re-interview anyone still living on Orchard Lane. Most had moved. But Mrs. Donnelly, the woman who'd last seen Brielle wave from her mailbox, still lived 2 houses down. Her memory was sharp, even at 89. I always thought it was strange how Mr. Ellison started working on the Carson basement without a permit. I remember hearing pounding at night. And one time, I swear, I saw Brielle talking to him through the fence. Did you report that? The detective asked. No. It didn't seem odd back then. Just a neighbor being friendly. But now it chilled her to the bone. Using banking records, detectives traced Ellison to an old trailer lot near Poplar Bluff, Missouri. They arrived to find the unit abandoned. Inside, piles of newspapers, paint cans, and, most chilling, a corkboard filled with photos of children. Some were from magazines. Others were Polaroids. 3 were of Brielle. Same day. Different angles. As if someone had followed her during her last ride. Pinned next to one photo was a hand-drawn floor plan of the Carson basement, dated June 2001, 2 months before Brielle vanished. At the bottom, one line was circled in red ink. Perfect fit. Easy access. Further forensic testing on the rusted trunk from the basement revealed a second DNA profile. Male, adult, partial match. It didn't belong to Brielle's father. It matched none of the family. But when entered into the national database, it returned a familial hit. A distant cousin of Mark Ellison, convicted on unrelated charges in 2009. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it narrowed the profile. Ellison had likely touched the items inside the trunk. possibly wrapped Brielle himself. Miranda Wexler, the woman who now lived in Brielle's old home, broke down in an interview. "I feel like we were meant to find her. Like she waited all this time, just to be seen again." She recalled something she hadn't shared before. "When we first bought the place, I found a weird notch under the basement stair, like someone had carved into the concrete. It said, 'Shoo.' I thought it was just old graffiti." Police returned to the home with luminol, and on the underside of the stairwell, a bloody fingerprint lit up. 1 week later, Renee Carson, the mother, received an envelope in her mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Inside, a single sheet of yellowed paper, written in shaky cursive. "I never meant for it to happen that way. She came to the basement door. She was just curious. I panicked. I thought I could fix it, but I was wrong. I am sorry." It was unsigned, but the paper had 2 distinct smudges. DNA analysis later confirmed one belonged to Brielle. The other matched the partial male profile from the trunk. As police dug deeper into Ellison's life, they uncovered a shocking connection. In 1993, 8 years before Brielle vanished, a 6-year-old girl named Layla Boone disappeared from her front yard in a town just 30 miles away. Her case was never solved. And one of the contractors listed on her family's home renovation? Mark Ellison. Same pattern, same timeline, same silence. Detectives filed for an emergency warrant to begin excavation of Ellison's old property, now vacant. Using ground-penetrating radar, they scanned the backyard. And at exactly 7 feet deep, the scanner hit a solid object. Roughly 3 feet long, rectangular, and metallic. As the crew prepared to dig, one of the officers noticed something else. Etched faintly into the dirt nearby was a name. Not Layla, not Brielle, but a third name. Samantha. A name no one had mentioned. Until now. The crew worked through the night. The GPR scanner had confirmed a rectangular object 7 feet beneath the soil. But it wasn't the only thing buried there. Near it, faintly scratched into dry earth, was a name etched with a dull tool. Samantha. No last name, no date, no context, but it felt deliberate, as if someone wanted her to be remembered, or maybe warned. By 10:43 a.m., the second metal container was raised from the ground. It was smaller than Brielle's, only 3 feet long, but similarly sealed. Heavily rusted. No label. No serial. Forensics stood by as the locks were carefully removed. Inside, a bundle of decayed fabric, and a single worn sandal, child-sized. Folded inside the cloth was a fragile, discolored birth certificate. Only the first name was legible. Samantha. The date of birth? March 18, 1985. That would have made the girl 8 years old when she disappeared. And then the shock hit. That name, Samantha Boone, had never been reported missing. Detective Jada Renner and her team began cross-referencing missing children databases, school records, and old reports. No Samantha Boone listed as missing, but one entry caught their attention. Layla Boone, age 6, disappeared from a playground in 1993, and her case had gone cold. Same last name, similar timeline, same region, just 2 towns away from where Ellison had been working. Investigators contacted Layla's older sister, Heather Boone, now 41. What she revealed would change everything. Heather met the detectives at her home outside Springfield. She brought out an old, tattered photo album. In one picture, 2 little girls stood smiling, arms around each other. One was clearly Layla. The other wore a bracelet labeled Sam. "That's Samantha," Heather said. "My half-sister. She was never registered in school. My mom didn't believe in it. We were off the grid for a while." But why wasn't she listed as missing? Heather swallowed hard. "Because my stepfather told us she ran away. My mom believed him. I didn't. I was 13. I knew something was wrong." "Who was your stepfather?" She reached for a photo at the bottom of the box. His name was Mark. Mark Ellison had married Heather and Layla's mother, Carla Boone, in 1992, just months before Samantha vanished. Heather explained how Mark was strict, secretive, and never touched us, but always watched. He had rules. No loud voices. No closed doors. And if you asked about Samantha, he said she was gone and never coming back. After Carla died in a car accident in 2005, Heather distanced herself from everything. I should have spoken up, but I was scared. And I didn't want to believe he could hurt a child. Now, her guilt consumed her. Tests confirmed that the remains in the second trunk were, in fact, Samantha Boone, age 8. She had died around 1993. Likely suffocated, though the cause of death was inconclusive due to decomposition. A journal found buried beside the trunk, sealed in plastic, had only 2 pages. Both written in a child's handwriting. The last line read, "Mommy didn't know. I tried to run. He said the basement was safe. It's not." Investigators discovered that every address Mark Ellison had lived in from 1990 to 2007 had something in common. Each had either a basement, crawl space, or secluded shed. And in 3 cases, there were reports of missing girls within a 50-mile radius. All unsolved. All eerily similar. Brielle Carson, 2001. Layla Boone, 1993, still unfound. Samantha Boone, 1993. The timeline matched. The victims matched. And the method was always the same. Befriend. Isolate. Disappear. At a press conference, Detective Renner spoke clearly. We believe Mark Ellison may be responsible for at least 4 child abductions between 1991 and 2001. We now consider him a serial predator operating undetected for over a decade. And we believe there may be more victims. Just as the investigation seemed to stall, a retired detective named Carl Danvers came forward. He had worked a case in 1996 involving a 10-year-old girl named Melody Cray, who vanished in nearby Mineral Point. She was last seen riding her bike. There were no witnesses. The case had gone cold. But when he saw Brielle's photo on the news, something clicked. Melody had also worn a purple helmet. Melody's parents had since passed. But her aunt, Joan Cray, still had the case file, newspaper clippings, and a small keepsake box that included Melody's drawings. One caught the attention of detectives. It was a crayon drawing labeled, "Melody's New Friend." The figure beside her had no face, but wore a flannel shirt. Beside him was a square shape with a staircase. At the bottom of the stairs, a black square with a child inside it. It looked like a trunk. Police immediately revisited the Mineral Point property where Melody had lived. It had been sold 4 times since 1996. Permission was granted for a search. They scanned the basement. And again, the radar beeped. Under the floorboards, another solid object, roughly the size of a child's coffin. But this time, there was something else. A faint red ink note carved into the wooden beam above. She's not alone. The crawl space was cold, silent, heavy with years of dust and forgotten air. Investigators worked slowly, carefully removing layers of old cement and rotted wood. Then, just under the foundation, they struck metal. Another container. Same dimensions. Same rusted surface. Same style of lock. But this one felt different. There were scratches along the lid. Scrape marks. As if someone inside had tried to get out. The lock gave out with a loud snap. Inside, a worn blanket, a faded purple windbreaker, and beneath it, a set of skeletal remains. Smaller than expected. Forensics confirmed the remains belonged to a child, approximately 10 to 11 years old. The dental records would later match those of Melody Cray. But there was something else in the trunk, taped to the underside of the lid. A hand-drawn map. The map was crudely drawn in pencil. Faded. Water-damaged. But investigators could make out details. A square labeled M House. An arrow pointing to Old Shed. a dotted line ending at a circle marked with the word others. At the bottom corner was a final message in a child's handwriting. She said they keep more in the place with the green door. Q detectives were baffled. Who was she? Another victim? An accomplice? They dug deeper into Mark Ellison's past, searching for anyone who might have assisted him or had knowledge of the crimes. Then a name surfaced. Charlotte Webb, age 61, once owned a farmhouse on Ellison's property in the late 90s. She had worked as a caretaker at a now-defunct behavioral wellness center, just 40 miles from Willow Glen. She was quiet, unassuming, and in 2002, she disappeared from public records completely. Until now. Investigators followed Melody's map. The arrow pointed to a patch of overgrown farmland just west of Potosi, Missouri. At the edge of the property, hidden by dense brush and years of decay, they found it. An abandoned storm shelter with a chipped, rusted green metal door. It was bolted shut from the outside, with a padlock newer than the shelter itself. Inside, it was pitch black. They pried the door open, and what they found inside froze everyone on the scene. It wasn't a storm shelter. It was a bunker. 10 by 12 feet. Cement walls. Molded mattress on the floor. A single, broken toilet. No light source. No ventilation. On the far wall, tally marks carved into the concrete. Over 1,000 of them. A plastic milk crate held 4 journals, each written in shaky, childish handwriting. The cover of the first read, MC, my name is Melody. If someone finds this, don't forget us. And beneath the crate, a pile of children's shoes. Melody's journal entries described being taken from the street, blindfolded, told to be quiet or go in the box. She mentioned a woman named Miss Charlotte, who brought her food and called her Little One. Melody talked about another girl who didn't talk much, and a boy who cried at night. She wrote, Miss Charlotte says we're safe, but safe doesn't smell like mold. Then in the final journal, a page with just 3 words. They never left. Forensics recovered fingerprints from the bunker walls. Most were untraceable, likely worn, aged, or partial. But 3 prints were solid enough for comparison. One belonged to Melody Cray, the second to Mark Ellison, and the third, fresh, unlisted, and matching none of the known victims. The FBI ran it through a broader database. The hit came from a missing child case out of Oklahoma, 1994. Jordan Slater, age 9, still listed as missing. Inside the milk crate, beneath the journals, investigators found a cassette tape in a Ziploc bag labeled Their Voices. A retired agent brought in an old cassette player and pressed play. For a moment, static. Then, a child's voice. Scared. Breathing heavy. Is the door locked? Another voice. Girl. Slightly older. Miss Charlotte said we can't leave. But I heard her talking to him. He says we're staying till the snow. I miss my sister. I miss Brielle. Silence. Then, metal scraping. A cry. And the tape ends. Detectives now believe there are still survivors. The journals, the prints, the map, the tapes, all pointed to one horrifying possibility. This wasn't just one man. This was a network, a system, and someone, possibly Miss Charlotte, was still out there. As the investigation team prepared to raid another location connected to the group, a message came through the tip line. An email. No subject. No signature. Just a single sentence. If you think it's over, check the cabin in Crow Ridge. Crow Ridge was the kind of place even maps forgot. An isolated stretch of forest in southeastern Missouri, abandoned since the early 1980s when logging towns dried up. No cell signal. No power lines. Just dirt roads, shadows, and silence. But nestled in a ravine behind a wall of sycamore trees was a cabin. The address wasn't listed. No ownership records. But the door was freshly painted. Green. Agents moved in around 6:22 a.m., just before sunrise. Guns drawn. Tactical units covering all angles. They breached the front door. Inside, dust, rot, mildew. But also signs of life. A teapot still warm. 2 plates on a table. A recently burned candle. Someone had just been there. In the back of the cabin, behind a locked pantry door, agents found something chilling. A wall, covered in names. Handwritten in charcoal. Each name marked with either an X or a next to it. Brielle Carson, X. Samantha Boone, X. Melody Cray, X. Jordan Slater, unknown girl. At the bottom, circled in red, they never listened. And beneath that, Crow Ridge B, Site 2. Agents found a small cot in the bedroom. Above it, pinned to the wooden beam, a photograph of a young girl, unfamiliar to police. She looked about 11 years old. Pale, sunken eyes. No name, no date. But she wore something unmistakable on her wrist. A purple and white hand-woven bracelet. The same kind Brielle was known to make in school. But this girl wasn't Brielle. This was someone else. In the kitchen drawer, hidden beneath old utensils, was a small, sealed envelope. Inside, a birth certificate. The name, Kiera Holloway. Born, July 2, 2011. But Kiera Holloway had never been reported missing. She wasn't even on any watch list. So how did her photo end up in this cabin? And more terrifying, was she still alive? Digging through the cabin's trash, agents found a receipt dated just 3 days earlier. It was for fuel, bottled water, and a single disposable camera. Purchased with cash from a convenience store in Cape Girardeau. Surveillance footage showed a woman with gray hair under a scarf. Recognized by facial comparison software. Charlotte Webb, alive, and very much still in the area. A trail behind the cabin led to an old barn, half collapsed by storms. Inside was a white van with tinted windows, partially covered in a blue tarp. When opened, the rear revealed something unthinkable. 5 booster seats, plastic water jugs, pillows, a notebook titled, "The Quiet Ones," the contents, checklists, feeding logs, sleep schedules, labeled by initials. One of them, KH, Kiera Holloway. She was real. And based on the notes, she had been inside that van as recently as 72 hours ago. On the last page, in different handwriting, was a single message. They took her from the Blue House. She didn't cry. Not even once. She's the strongest. Just like the first. Detectives believe this may reference Brielle. But it also raised a new question. Was there a 6th girl? Someone before Brielle? Someone they hadn't even discovered yet? Behind the bathroom mirror in the cabin, agents discovered another folded map. This one marked a route deep into the woods, beyond what was accessible by road. A trail carved in pen, ending at a red X. Next to it, Crow Ridge B, Site 2, and underlined twice. Only the quiet ones go here. The team geared up. They had no choice. As they approached the second site, an isolated clearing covered in moss and fog, they found a strange wooden hatch. It was bolted from the outside. A chain hung loose. One of the agents leaned down and heard something. Movement. A soft knock. And then a voice. Muffled. Faint. But undeniably a child. "Hello? Is someone there? Can I come out now?" The woods were still. Only the soft chirp of morning birds and the sound of scraping metal cut through the quiet. The agent knelt beside the old wooden hatch. "Can you hear me?" The voice from below answered. "Yes. I've been waiting." Another agent looked at the lock. "It's rusted shut. We'll have to cut it." As the circular saw ground through the chain, silence fell again. One agent whispered, "Please, let this not be another grave." When the hatch finally gave way, a narrow iron ladder disappeared into the ground. Flashlights pierced the blackness. A low chamber revealed itself, 10 by 10 feet. And in the corner was a little girl, thin, pale, clutching a ragged blanket. She blinked against the light, eyes wide. No tears, just exhaustion. "Are you Kira?" the agent asked softly. The girl nodded. "Yes, but she calls me number 6. Kira Holloway had been missing for at least 2 years, but had never been reported. Why? Because her mother was in prison. Her father, deceased. She'd lived in a foster home, one that mysteriously burned down in 2021. Her disappearance had slipped through the cracks. Kira was the girl in the photograph found at the cabin. Now she was here, alive, but emotionally vacant. "Did Charlotte bring you here?" "No. The man did. She just kept me quiet." "The man? The one with the boots?" "He said he made the boxes." "The quiet boxes." Inside the bunker, agents discovered 3 wooden crates, a can of red paint, a notepad with Q-box rotation written at the top, and a folder labeled acclimation process. Each crate had air holes, a latch, and foam lining, like soundproof coffins. These weren't for storage. They were conditioning tools, to silence children, to break them down, to erase identity. Kira pointed to one and whispered, "That was Melody's first box. She hated it." "You knew Melody?" "She sang to me through the walls." Kira gave the agents a name. Grayson. He came at night, wore gloves, always whistling, like a bird song. FBI ran the name through cross-state registries. One match stood out. Grayson Hale, 63, deceased 2018, former custodian at 2 of the towns connected to the missing girls. But there was a problem. He wasn't alone. A second name appeared in archived employee records. Clara Hale, his wife, still alive. Last known address, unknown. Then Kira spoke again. "She's not gone. She left yesterday. She said she was going to the next one." The agent froze. "Kira, what did she mean by that?" "She said there's always another one. Another quiet one. A better one." She pointed to the notepad on the floor. Agents scanned it. It listed 6 coded names, each with initials and check marks. And at the bottom, CAETA, 3 days. The team panicked. A 7th child? Someone they hadn't found yet? Back at the forensic center, Tex finally finished cleaning the second audio tape found at the Green Door cabin. On it, a conversation between Charlotte and a young girl. "Girl, can I see the sun today?" Charlotte, "Not yet, love. We have to wait until Grayson's shift ends." Girl, "He said I can be quiet without the box now." Charlotte, "That's because you're special. You listen." Girl, "But I miss talking. I miss my real name." Charlotte, "Soon. But not yet." Girl, "Okay. I'll be quiet." Then static. And a final whisper. Girl, "My name is Selena." CA on the notepad. Selena Alvarez. A 9-year-old girl missing from Amarillo, Texas just 6 weeks ago. Amber Alert had expired. She'd been presumed abducted. Now, she was listed as Target 7. ETA, 3 days. But ETA to where? The map didn't say. Only a final phrase. Final stop, where the bells sleep. An FBI profiler reviewed the phrase. Bells sleep could refer to an old town, a cemetery, a place of silence, a funeral home, maybe even a church. The team scrambled through location databases and found it. An abandoned convent near the Arkansas border. Shut down in 2005. Now used only by hunters. Locals called it Bell's Rest. A helicopter was dispatched immediately. As it rose into the sky, Kira, now wrapped in a blanket, held onto the agent's hand and said softly, "She said the last one would be the quietest." The convent was swallowed by vines. Old stone walls cracked with age. At one time, Bell's Rest had been a place of prayer. Now, it whispered nothing but secrets. Agents landed at 6:41 a.m. They fanned out. No electricity. No working locks. Only the sound of boots crunching through decades of leaves. Then, a whisper over the radio. "I've got movement in the West Wing basement."